J-Bone here. Before we head back to Saudi Arabia, which I literally feel like we were just at yesterday, I want to say a very quick thank you to everybody listening right now. Formula Bone hit a milestone of 100,000 followers on TikTok today, and that is all because of your support of Formula Bone. You all are the absolute best. I love you, and because I love you, I will not make you wait any longer. This is the Formula Bone F1 show. J-Bone! Welcome back to the Formula Bone F1 show, the Formula One podcast that is not counting out McLaren. Yet. I'm Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and away we go. Today's main topic, previewing the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix that is happening this weekend, and we are going to start off this preview, as always, by discussing the circuit at which the Grand Prix will be taking place. That is the same as last year, the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Huge news, for those of you wondering, the circuit has been fully completed, unlike last year, where they were still setting up the paddock club during free practice. It was absurd. That was an insane rush. I feel like we're never going to get a rush that crazy again to finish a circuit. Truly bizarre. I remember we were in Brazil and they're like, Saudi Arabia is 2 races away. And they're showing images of it and it just looks like a completely under construction road. Doesn't even look like a circuit. Just looks like a general road you'd see. It was absurd. They ended up, by some marvel of modern engineering, getting it finished. It was pretty crazy to see. And but now it's fully completed and ready to go. The Jeddah Corniche circuit is the newest circuit on the F1 calendar and is said to be both the fastest street circuit and the most dangerous circuit, which I suppose goes hand in hand. After last year's race, which featured 5 DNFs and 2 red flags, some current and former drivers voiced their complaints about the way the track was set up, with the major complaint being that there are too many full-speed blind corners, especially when the circuit is as narrow as Jeddah Corniche is. After DNFing in last year's race due to a run-in with Nikita Mazepin, George Russell said, quote, "It was just chaos through turn 3 to 7. You couldn't see anything and cars were everywhere. It's a great track to drive, but it's a bit of a recipe for disaster, so definitely a rethink is needed. If we do come back here next year, which I guess we are, I think there are some things that they need to modify to make these kinks just straights because it's so blind. We've already seen too many incidents waiting to happen." So the question is the Jeddah Corniche circuit we're headed to this weekend the same as the quote-unquote recipe for disaster circuit you may or may not have seen a brake test occur at last season, depending on whether you're a Mercedes or Red Bull fan? To answer that question, I will answer it. That's how you answer a question. The answer, I don't even know how to answer a question. I can't even talk. The answer to that question is no, it is not the same circuit as race promoter Saudi Motorsport Company, feel like they could have picked a cooler name, has stated that a number of changes have been made to make the circuit more driver friendly, like the drivers were wanting. They just want friends in the form of circuits and changes to them. Here are some of the changes that you will be seeing this weekend at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. A track limits change regarding the barrier on the right-hand side of turn 27, which will be moved back around 1.5 meters. This is the only track limits change being made, but it is a huge one, as turn 27, you may famously remember, is the barrier at turn 27 on the right-hand side, the one they're talking about here, is the one that famously cost Max Verstappen pole position. It is the one that he locked up and then hit and then stopped his car and ended up qualifying P3. He was going to 100% qualify P1, I believe, by 0.3, but he locked up. He was really going to the limits that entire lap. One of the best flying laps. I still say to this day, Max's Q3 lap that he crashed right at the end of at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix last year is the best qualifying lap I've ever seen. He was so at the limit. He almost hit, there was a barrier earlier in the lap that you're like, oh my God, did he just hit that? And it was like fractions away. And he was going full speed. He was going so fast. And I remember being at the edge of my seat being like, oh my God, Max is going to complete this lap. He is going to get pole position. And then this is going to be Max's World Championship moment. He's going to win this race. He's going to win the World Drivers' Championship, and it's going to be unbelievable. And then literally while I was having all those thoughts, he locked up, hit the barrier on the right-hand side of turn 27, and you all know how the rest of the season ended. Now, the fact that they are moving back this exact barrier on the right-hand side of turn 27, 1.5 meters, shows, if you watch the race, you saw that many drivers almost hit that barrier. So I think that they're trying to prevent what happened to Max, as well as what almost happened to a number of other drivers by moving that out. It is interesting that is the only track limits change being made. As you may have seen, George Russell asked in that interview I just read to you a few seconds ago, he wanted there to be some of the more winding sections made into straights, which they did not do. But what they did do was they made visibility improvements on the track. Visibility improvements have been made at turns 2, 3, 14, and 21, where the barriers are being moved back between 1.5 and 2 meters, with the track limits at those turns remaining the same. So they are making some visibility improvements by moving back the barriers while keeping the track limits the same. Again, until we get out there racing, I don't think any of us are really going to know how good these improvements are, whether they are improvements or if they're not just things to say are improvements so that the drivers are able to come back and race there and not boycotting. I don't know. We will find out soon. Another change, there will be a smoother barrier on the apexes of turns 4, 16, 22, and 24, so drivers can potentially brush the barrier as they pass. Hopefully these changes make drivers feel and be safer. I'm still worried, though, about the turn 21, 22 area, even with the changes that they're making in terms of visibility improvements and the apex barrier change. We saw 3 separate solo crashes at the turn 21, 22 area last year from Leclerc, Mick Schumacher, and F2's Logan Sargent. Go USA. Not the crash, but just Logan Sargent in general, where luckily nobody was injured or injured badly. But that is still an area of the racetrack where if a driver crashes and then bounces back into the circuit rather than staying in the barrier, it is not good because it's high speeds, low visibility, tight track, could lead to an extremely bad shunt if a car is to hit that barrier, bounce back in to the track limits. Really hope that does not happen. Here's to hoping we avoid that and leave Jeddah with as many healthy drivers as we arrive with, or maybe even add another healthy driver. Maybe just pull a kid out of the stands, throw him in a car, who knows? See what happens. Even with all these changes, you should still be prepared for a virtual safety car, or red flag at any moment at Jeddah, which really ups the chaos factor of this race and the excitement factor too, as long as, of course, we have no injuries. This episode of the Formula BONE F1 show is brought to you in part by a sponsor that I am obsessed with, Trade Coffee. I have some bad news for all of you. 90% of coffee from the grocery store is actually stale before you even put it into your cart. You heard that right. The coffee you know and think you love needs an upgrade. Let Trade Coffee send you something freshly roasted and ethically sourced that you are literally guaranteed to love because it's only sent to you after you take Trade Coffee's amazing coffee quiz. Designed by coffee experts, this quiz takes less than 1 minute. Just less than 1 minute. And it matches you with the perfect coffee out of their 400 plus roasts. That coffee is then roasted on demand for you and delivered right to your door. No more stale coffee, only deliciousness. After you take Trade's coffee quiz, Trade Coffee guarantees you'll love your first bag or they will replace it for free. Trade has been featured by the New York Times, Wired, GQ, and has delivered over 5 million bags of coffee. Their subscription is also no hassle. You can skip shipments, change your frequency, or cancel at any time. I personally love Trade Coffee. If you ever see me on Twitch, I'm drinking coffee all Twitch stream long. I am obsessed with coffee. And I'm also a big fan of supporting small, independent coffee roasteries that are run by good people. And every roastery Trade works with pays fair prices to the people who grow their coffee around the world. It is just amazing. Trade Coffee matches my very specific taste in coffee to independent roasteries from all over the country, featuring coffee beans from all over the globe. I like to get my coffee a whole bean from Trade, but you can get it to whatever grind you want. You can get whole bean. You can get it all the way down to espresso grind. They grind it for you, tailored to whatever coffee maker you have in your place. It is the future of coffee, you guys, and I'm so happy that I have a deal for you with Trade Coffee. For Formula BONE F1 Show listeners, right now Trade Coffee is offering a total of $20 off your first 3 bags when you go to drinktrade.com/FBONE. Yes, $20 off your first 3 bags, and I can guarantee you they will not be your last 3 bags because Trade is the best coffee sourcer in the world. Let them drastically enhance your morning, afternoon, and maybe even nightly routine if you're a coffee savage like I am with their fresh, delicious, and perfectly matched coffees. That URL again is drinktrade.com/FBONE, FBONE, for $20 off your first 3 bags. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Trade Coffee for supporting the Formula BONE F1 show. Continuing on, here are your storylines to follow for the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. The first storyline, how will the 2022 cars fare at their first street circuit? We have already heard multiple drivers and commentators say that they are worried about the effects the new 18-inch tires and the over-wheel winglets will have on drivers' ability to navigate narrow street circuits, which oftentimes have corners that require cars to come within inches of a barrier in order to stay on an optimal racing line. These 2 new components, the 18-inch tires and the over-wheel winglets, make it harder for drivers to judge how close their front wings and wheels get to barriers, and thus have the potential to make this Grand Prix have even more yellow and red flags than last year's race did. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying this is a storyline to follow because I have heard drivers say that they're worried about, especially Monaco, but specifically they were saying Monaco, but obviously this is also a street circuit. It also has you getting close to barriers, so close in fact that they even changed up some barriers because drivers said they kind of want to brush against them. I don't know if drivers are going to be able to properly judge their brushing against the barrier with the new huge tires and the over-wheel winglets. Something to watch for, guys and gals. We've also seen that the 2022 cars can follow closer than the 2021 cars could. The cars at the start of the Bahrain Grand Prix were so bunched together that they looked like the lunch rush drive-through line at a Chick-fil-A. It was just a straight-up drive-through line out there. I think this means that there is a heightened probability of a domino effect crash situation if cars are indeed more closely bunched up at Jeddah and one of them crashes or has a malfunction. Not a lot of time to react if they're close together, not a lot of room to react at a narrow circuit like Jeddah. Hopefully we can avoid a 1998 Belgian Grand Prix situation. If you don't know what I'm referring to, it is maybe the craziest crash in Formula One history. Go look it up on YouTube. The next storyline, Charles Leclerc's street circuit woes. Speaking of not knowing whether they can handle a street circuit or not, I will be watching Charles Leclerc intently this whole race weekend long. Why, you may ask? Charles Leclerc has been having major issues with regard to slamming into barriers at street circuits recently. Leclerc suffered race weekend crashes at 3 different street circuits last season, running into the barriers during practice or qualifying in Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, and most famously Monaco, from which he suffered the gearbox damage that prevented the car from even starting the race. You have to think, or at least wonder, whether all the pressure that Leclerc is under as the World Drivers' Championship leader, and with all the hype that the Ferraris have right now, and also the speed and narrowness of Jeddah, which is a place he's crashed before last year, like I said, you have to wonder if all that combined might make Leclerc get into his own head a little bit and have his performance impacted. And if not, if he can handle all of that and still win this race, that definitely says something about Leclerc's character and will make me very bullish on him this season. This weekend will be quite the test for Charles Leclerc. Let's see if he passes, folks. The next storyline, Red Bull's reliability issues. Red Bull have consistently blamed their fuel pumps for their double retirement in Bahrain, with Helmut Marko saying Wednesday that, quote, a vacuum in the fuel supply system caused the engine to run out of fuel, and also, quote, I think we can solve the problem already in Saudi Arabia this weekend. However, many people, including yours truly, FBONE, are skeptical of Red Bull's explanation, given the fact that the odds of almost simultaneous fuel pump failures in both their cars at the end of a race seems to me smaller than the odds of other similar but different issues. And no, I do not think that the Red Bulls ran out of fuel like some people are theorizing. The theory that I personally subscribe to has to do with the fact that Red Bull did not run a full race simulation in testing before the season. I think that this may have led to them not properly understanding how the new E10 fuel that the cars have this year with ethanol reacts when fuel is low and the car is hot at the end of a race. I'm no technical expert, but I did read up on fuel cavitation, which is when fuel begins to bubble, and these bubbles can then get into the fuel pump and cause fuel supply issues. Apparently, the E10 fuel, the new fuel this year, runs at a different temperature than the fuel from last season and seasons prior, and thus the cavitation threshold is now changed, something that Red Bull would not have noticed during testing because they did not run any full race simulations with low fuel and a hot car. As far as whether this fuel cavitation issue is an easy fix for Red Bull, or if it's even the actual issue that they're experiencing, because for all we know, Helmut Marko is telling the truth, that all remains to be seen. And by the end of this weekend, we should know if Red Bull have generally figured their problems out, whatever those problems may be. Another storyline to follow. Can Haas shock the world once more? I think maybe. Because A, I'm currently suffering from HDS or Haas delusion syndrome. And because B, Kevin Magnussen, the man, the myth, the legend, K-Mag loves street circuits, okay? Loves them. K-Mag has 2 fastest lap awards, both coming in Singapore, a street circuit, and both coming in a Haas less competitive compared to the field than the one that he appears to be in now. K-Mag also has said, specifically, quote, I personally love street circuits. I'd welcome a lot more street circuits on the calendar. I think they're more exciting and more challenging as well because the margin for error is smaller. All of that, paired with the fact that last year's chaotic race saw midfield drivers like Ocon get P4 and Antonio freaking Italian Jesus Giovinazzi finish in the points. It's like one of the 3 times he even finished in the points last year. That all makes me think we could see an amazing Haas result once more, and potentially even a Haas double points finish if Mick can get that image of him crashing 10 laps in at Jeddah last year out of his head. Go get 'em, boys. This episode of the Formula Bone F1 show is brought to you in part by my favorite leg garment manufacturers, Birddogs. I wear Birddogs shorts, pants, and joggers constantly. I love my joggers so much that I recently decided to always jog now instead of ever walking so that I can be a true joggers guy. It has impacted my daily life severely. It has ruined personal relationships, but these pants are so comfortable, I do not care. Birddogs built-in underwear, yes, built-in underwear, feels better on my skin than the finest cashmere, and it's also super breathable and does not bunch up like traditional underwear. You can get Birddogs shorts, pants, and joggers with or without the built-in underwear, but get it with. That's my recommendation. Head to birddogs.com and get yourself the best shorts, pants, and joggers on planet Earth. And do not forget to use my code FBONE, that's FBONE, so that they throw in a free whistle tip football. Yeah, I said whistle tip football. Okay? Birddogs whistle tip football is even better than those old Nerf Vortex howlers you used to try and fail to throw over your house. But you can probably throw Birddogs football over some mountains if you're strong enough. I have one in front of me right now. If you're watching on YouTube, I love this thing. I go in the backyard and throw it all the time with my coworkers. It's fun. I enjoy it. Go to birddogs.com right now, load your cart up with the best shorts, pants, and joggers available anywhere on planet Earth, plug in promo code FBONE to get that free whistling football, and live happily ever after. Birddogs.com, promo code FBONE, FBONE. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Birddogs for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. And finally today, it is time to give you my prediction for the top 5 finishers in this Sunday's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Keen observers will note that I'm not very great at these predictions, thus far at least. But my goal is to just get one top 5 completely correct this season, and I will not stop before or after I do. So let's get into it. My P5 prediction for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is Kevin Magnussen. Again, you might be thinking I'm suffering from HDS, Haas delusion syndrome, but I have some pretty good reasoning here. The man loves street circuits, okay, loves them, and is just generally killing it at life right now, and is in a car that's clearly capable of a top 5 finish when there are retirements. I think there's going to be some retirements at Jeddah, so K-Mag, I have you at P5. My P4 prediction is Lewis Hamilton. Lewis was putting up fastest laps at Jeddah last year with a damaged front wing. So even though his car is not the best right now, I still think he takes P4. Never smart to not put Lewis in a top 5. That's what I've learned. My P3 prediction, Carlos Sainz, mostly just because he's in a Ferrari and is a good driver, so I think he's going to get a top 3, and I don't think he's getting P2 or P1, so process of elimination puts him at P3. P2, I have Charles Leclerc. I think he'll be driving a little scared because of his recent street circuit woes. Like I said earlier, he recently has crashed here at Jeddah, at Monaco, and Baku, some of the most recent street circuits he's raced on. I think he might be a little bit hesitant, a little bit scared of the barriers, and not attacking as much as the guy I have in P1. So I have Charles Leclerc at P2. And in P1, I have Max Verstappen. I think Max is a man possessed right now, wanting to score his first points of the season and also to redeem himself after the car let him down in Bahrain. I also think Max wants to redeem his amazing qualifying lap last year that ended just before the finish line. And I think he is going to try to put forth an amazing qualifying lap, but actually finish it this time. And I think it's going to be in his head. He knows how good that lap he was on was. I think he wants to finish that lap. I'm going to trust Helmut Marko that Red Bull can get the issues they're having fixed before this weekend. And if they do, Max's Red Bull is a super fast car driven by a super fast man with a massive chip on his shoulder. Max, Super Max. Let's see if I'm right. It's time for some shout-outs. Shout out to @JReedHatley on Twitter for sharing the Formula Bone F1 show in his F1 group text and tweeting a screenshot at me. If you are in an F1 group text or a Formula One Discord, sharing the podcast in there is the absolute best way to help me grow the show. Another shout out, as always, to everybody in the Formula Bone Discord, which you can join via the invite link in the description of this episode. DM me if you want to be shouted out, by the way. Before I get going, I'd like to run you through the links that I've placed in the description of this episode. You can chat with me as I live stream myself talking Formula One, playing the F1 video game, and opening packs of F1 trading cards on twitch.tv/FormulaBone. You can join the 200 plus member Formula Bone Discord server with the invite link I've placed in the description of this episode. You can help support the Formula Bone F1 show financially by buying Formula Bone merch at bolenmedia.com/shop. You can support the show financially in an even greater capacity and support yourself by supporting today's sponsors, who I love. That is Trade Coffee at drinktrade.com/FBONE for $20 off your first 3 bags of ethically sourced, perfectly matched coffee. Seriously, try them out. I drink their coffee every morning and I love it. You can also shop Birddogs at birddogs.com, promo code FBONE, for a free whistle tip football with your order of the best shorts, pants, and joggers on the planet. And again, every link and deal I just said you can find in the description of this episode, whether you're listening to this as a podcast or on YouTube. Just check the description. I got it all there for you. You can follow me, J-Bone, everywhere on social media at Jared Borislow. That's at JaredBorislow. And if you're now all caught up on the Formula Bone F1 show, but want to keep hearing my voice, I co-host a comedy podcast called the Ross Bolen Podcast, where we share a ton of laughs covering a wide variety of topics, including current events, non-F1 sports, music, food, funny news stories, and so much more, while also diving into some mental health discussion as well. If you like this podcast, I promise you will love that podcast. You can check out the Ross Bolen Podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. That's ROSSBOLEN, the Ross Bolen Podcast. Folks, it's time for the NPR style sign-off. The Formula Bone F1 show is recorded in Austin, Texas, and brought to you by Bolen Media. It's hosted by me, Jared J-Bone Borislow, and I also produce the show because I'm a content machine. Kate Orris, Michael Heim, and I make all the podcast clips that you see on social media at Formula Bone. Our iconic theme music and Twitch stream music is by 7 to Midnight. You can follow him on social media at the number 7 TO Midnight. You can follow the show on social media by following at Formula Bone everywhere. You can watch the show on YouTube by searching Formula Bone. And you can help the show gain new listeners by rating and reviewing the Formula Bone F1 show on Apple Podcasts and by rating it on Spotify. Until next time, J-Bone!